Who would really win? A samurai vs. a knight, a highly trained soldier with a sword and armor, takes on an equally skilled fighter wielding a katana in medieval combat. Who would really win? In feudal Japan, samurai were the military nobility who were trained to be fierce fighters and unwavering in their loyalty to their lord or daimyo. The word samurai means literally one who serves, and these warriors were expected to live and die for their master's honor. In medieval Europe, knights also served their lords, usually members of the royal family or the high nobility. Unlike the knights, who fought on horseback in battle, the samurai fought on foot. By comparison, the standard knightly sword was straight and double-edged, measuring between 32 inches and 42 inches long. For example, samurai were proficient in the use of bows and arrows, spears, and other bladed weapons, while knights were often skilled with maces, axes, and other blunt weapons. However, to truly determine the outcome of a battle between a samurai, knights were typically larger and stronger than samurai, reflecting the general physique of medieval Europeans. This is due to the fact that the samurai were trained from a young age to fight, and were constantly practicing their martial arts skills. Knights wore heavy plate armor that covered their entire body, while samurai wore lighter, more flexible armor. The samurai's superior swordsmanship and the advantages offered by the katana would be difficult for the knight to overcome. However, in a broader context, considering strategy, tactics, and overall combat ability, the outcome of a battle between a knight and a samurai is less clear-cut. Both were highly trained warriors with distinct styles and approaches to combat. Ultimately, the winner of such a battle would depend on a variety of factors beyond just their sword skills. The heavy armor worn by knights made them slower and more cumbersome, but they were better protected against incoming attacks. Samurai armor was lighter and more flexible, which made them faster and more agile, but they were also more vulnerable to injury. Overall, the outcome of a battle between a knight and a samurai would depend on a variety of factors, including the skill of the individual fighters, the strategies and tactics they employ, the type of weapons they use, and the terrain of the battlefield. It's important to avoid generalizations and stereotypes when comparing these two warrior classes, and instead consider the unique qualities and characteristics of each. They were also taught to fight with a variety of weapons, including the katana, the bow and arrow, the spear, and the staff. Knights, on the other hand, were not necessarily trained in martial arts, although many of them were quite skilled with weapons such as the sword and shield. Most knights received their training in combat from experience and from other knights. This is not to say that knights were not skilled fighters, because many of them were, but in general, they were not as skilled as the samurai. They also received training in different styles of fighting, such as with the sword, shield, and lance. Samurais were known for their speed, agility, and precision, making them incredibly efficient fighters. They were trained to fight with the katana, the bow, and other weapons, as well as engage in hand-to-hand combat. One key difference between knights and samurai was their approach to fighting. Knights often fought to disable or kill their opponent, while samurai were trained to end a fight as quickly and efficiently as possible, valuing a clean, decisive strike that demonstrated their skill and honor. And a knight, it is essential to consider all aspects of medieval combat, including strategy, tactics, and overall combat ability. Strategy and tactics, knights and samurai both employed various strategies and tactics in battle. Knights often fought on horseback, using their mobility and shock troops to break through enemy lines. They also utilized formations such as the classic medieval Battle of the Chiltern, where soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder in a tight formation, forming a wall of shields to deflect incoming attacks. Samurai, on the other hand, fought primarily on foot, relying on their discipline and skill to overcome opponents. They used different formations, such as the wheel and the finger formation, which allowed them to concentrate their forces and unleash powerful, well-coordinated attacks. However, when comparing the two head-on in a one-on-one sword duel, the samurai's katana has several advantages over the knight's sword. First, the katana's curved shape allowed for deeper cuts and greater slashing power. Second, the katana's sharp edge on only one side meant that it was easier to wield with a single hand, allowing the samurai to attack more quickly and efficiently. Third, The katana's tapered and pointed tip was effective for thrusting attacks, while the knight's sword, with its blunt tip, was less effective in this regard. It was designed for thrusting and slashing attacks, much like the katana. Still, the weight of the sword could make it cumbersome, especially when compared to the samurai's more nimble weapon. But when we are talking about a battle between just a knight and a samurai, how would this sword compare against the samurai's katana? Well, not very well, to be honest. Straight swords aren't good for quick slashes, so the knight would most likely lose in this scenario. This required a high level of physical fitness and stamina. Knights primarily used lances and swords, with their shields providing crucial support during combat. Samurai, on the other hand, relied heavily on a curved sword known as a katana. Katana were typically around 3 feet long, with a sharp, slightly longer blade on one side and a blunt edge on the other. While knights commonly wielded two-handed swords, samurai were trained to use their katana with one hand, leaving their other hand free for other tasks such as holding a shield or gripping their horse's reins when mounted. Both were trained from youth to fight and protect their lord. They both held religious beliefs central to their way of life. The knightly virtues of courage, loyalty, obedience, courtesy, piety, and justice mirrored those of the samurai. Their code of conduct was known as Bushido, which is often translated as the way of the warrior. It was an unwritten code of behavior that governed the way a samurai should live, fight, and die. Similar to the knights, the samurai had a strict code of conduct. Bushido emphasized loyalty, honor, courage, self-discipline, and respect for others. During battle, knights wore heavy armor, often weighing around 60 pounds, made from interlocking metal plates that covered their entire body. This armor was designed to deflect blows from swords, arrows, and other weapons. Samurais wore lighter armor than knights, typically weighing around 20 to 30 pounds. This armor consisted of multiple layers of fabric and leather, providing flexibility and mobility. So one could argue that the knight would have the advantage in a battle because of the extra protection his armor provided. However, there is more to fighting in battle than just being protected from your opponent's weapons. The samurai lived for battle and were renowned for their fearless demeanor in the face of danger. It was considered dishonorable for a samurai to use both hands on the katana, but they might use both hands if they were fighting a particularly tough opponent. It's worth noting that both samurai and knights were trained to use a variety of weapons. If we add in the samurai's superior sword skills into the mix, then it is likely that the samurai would prevail in a one-on-one sword duel against a knight. Overall combat ability, knights and samurai were both highly trained warriors, but there are some differences to consider. When it comes to martial arts, the samurai were generally considered to be more skilled than the knights. Armor, as previously mentioned, the type of armor worn by knights and samurai also played a role in their fighting styles and abilities. So who would really win? In a one-on-one sword duel between a highly trained medieval knight and a skilled samurai, it is likely that the samurai would come out on top. But let us know what you think in the comments below.